What's going on, you guys? Claire, welcome back to the channel, Code Commerce. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how you create this quiz application in Next.js 13. I'm going to be going over some of the new cool features in Next.js 13, such as the routing, use client, and a few others as well. So if you want to see how I build this, you can see I'll give you a quick demo with Large Planet Art System. Vatican City. This is a pretty cool portfolio project you can use, and also just a good project all around to get familiar with Next.js 13. So we're going to be calculating our overall score, total number of questions, our total score here, we're incrementing by 5, our amount of answers we got right, and the amount of answers we got wrong. Then we can restart. And again, I'm going to show you how we can this is actually, I'm not sure you see this. This is quiz. So I'm going to be going over the routing in Next.js 13 as well. So if you want to see how I built this from start to finish, then let's go ahead and get started. Now I'm already in VS Code, which is a blank code editor, and I'm already in the file I want to be working in. So I'm going to press the Control backtick button, open up my terminal here, and let's go ahead and add let's create our project here. So I'm going to say npx create -next -app, and I'm going to go ahead and install this into the current directory, the latest version. So go ahead and press enter here, and I'm not going to be using TypeScript, don't need the ESLiner, no Tailwind for once, I know, right? If you've seen any of my videos, I do use a lot of Tailwind, huge fan, I love it. So there's a few nuances, kind of some new things that Next.js 13 came out with. Most notably, man, that was fast installing, right? So most notably is the routing feature that it just handled a little bit different, and we're going to get into all of that. So let's go ahead and press npm run dev. It's going to start up our development server here. Now I'm already on port 3000, showing you the demo. So let's just go over to 3001. And this is just kind of the boilerplate code that Next.js gives us, creating a new Next.js application. So we're a bit slow there. All right, there we go. So let's go ahead and get started here. So like I said, one of the new things in Next.js is the routing. So you might notice if you're familiar with Next.js, then this is going to look just a little bit different. So we're only going to be working inside of this app folder right here, okay? So we don't need to be worried about anything else. So this page is where all of our kind of our home page, if you will. We can add all of our components in here, and then our layout, everything, our page just kind of gets injected into the layout. Okay, so start off, let's go ahead and let's delete this page.module.css. We're not going to be using CSS modules, very minimal CSS in this build. So let's get rid of that there. And let's go ahead and close this. We can get back into our page, and I'm just going to delete everything inside of this main tag. I'm going to leave the main tag, but delete everything else. Okay, and let's go ahead and get rid of that styles there. And we can get rid of both of those. We are going to go ahead and import, we'll say link from next/link. We're going to be using that here in just a bit, so we might as well go ahead and import that. So let's open up our, you know what, let's go ahead and add in some code in here real quick. So inside this main tag, I'm going to create a div, class name of container. I'm going to have an h1. I'm going to call this quiz app. Okay. And let's go ahead and I'm going to create, we're going to create a link here. So I'm going to say a link just like so. There we go. And inside here, we're going to have a button, and we'll say start quiz. So let's go ahead and save that so it gets nice and formatted. Now we're getting an error here. We actually have to link to a certain page. So href, and then we'll say /quiz. Now we don't actually have this route yet, so we're probably going to get an error whenever we click on that, and that's fine, or it's just not going to go anywhere. So how does routing in Next.js 13 work? Well, it's actually really easy, and it's pretty cool. So inside of this app folder, for each route you want to have, you're just going to create a folder with the name of that route. So inside here, inside the app, I'm going to create a folder, and I want this to be called quiz. So our link's going to be our domain name /quiz. Okay. Then inside of the folder, we create a file called page.jsx. Okay. So let's go ahead and say refce, and we'll say quiz page, just like that. So now if we click on this, should go to our quiz page. I know it's kind of small, but you can see we are now linking to 3001/quiz. So that's how routing works. Just to give you kind of another example. If you wanted an about page, for example, you create a folder, the name of about, and then we'll say page.jsx refce, and this would be the about page. So if we now go over, I'm not going to link to it. I'm just going to type it in. Again, the name of the folder is about, so that's what I'm going to type in there. And you'll be able to see this is the about page. So pretty cool, and that's how Next.js routing works at a high level. So pretty cool there. We can go ahead and delete that, or you can just leave it. It doesn't really matter. We're not going to link to it. I just kind of wanted to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it. I just want to show you how, at a high level, how the routes work in Next.js 13. So next, what I want to do, so we're going to be using a few things here. I'm going to go ahead and open up my little terminal in here, or console, so we can see. Cool. I'd like to have that going. Now, we need a few things. So for our quiz, just kind of give you an example, we're going to have a few things here. So we're going to be keeping track of the question that we're on. We're on the first question, second question, last question. The actual question text here, we're going to map through all of our array of answers there. And we're going to keep track on which answer is selected. Then, of course, whenever we hit the next button, we're going to have to track the score, if it's right or if it's wrong, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do next is actually go ahead and add in some styling. So if you don't want to, I'm going to go ahead and delete all of this styling, and I'm going to put a link to this build, of course, down in my GitHub down in the description below. So feel free to just copy this over if you don't want to actually type in. If you feel comfortable with CSS and you want to just copy it over, then feel free to do that as well. So I'm just going to type this in. It's only going to take a couple minutes. Feel free absolutely to follow along as well. I think it's always good to practice some CSS, especially if you're not super familiar. We'll say overflow X there. We'll say hidden. I'm going to go back over here. So we're not going to be able to see many of these changes yet till we actually add in our JSX. So we'll say background color 00, and then we'll say 925. Kind of like a dark blue / black maybe. So we'll say padding of 1 rem. There we go. And next we'll have our H1 and our H2. And I'm going to give those a color of E. It's kind of like a light gray. H3, and we'll say padding bottom of 2 rem. There we go. And a color, I want to have this color of 000105. And a font size of 1.8 rem. Okay. Let's give ourselves some space here. Next, a button. And we're not going to have too much CSS, you guys. So again, feel free, please do just skip forward if you don't want to type in the CSS. So like I said, there'll be a link to the GitHub down below as always. So 8 pixels there on the button, width 100%. We'll say margin top 12 pixels, and then we'll have a font size of 1 rem. Border radius, we'll say 4 pixels. Okay, and a cursor pointer. Okay, and a background color, we'll say kind of this like light gray color. Okay, looks like I left off a semicolon. All right, and then a color of F8, kind of like that. Perfect. And now, so that's our button. Now we're also going to have a button disabled class. So I'm going to paste that in here. Button disabled, and we'll say background color. We'll just say light gray. Okay, and we'll have our list items. So our list items are going to be list style type. I want to say none, so we don't have those little bullet points. Okay, cursor pointer, margin 8 pixels top and bottom. There we go, 8 pixels top and bottom, 0 on the left and right. Okay, there we go. And we also want to add in some padding. So I'm going to say padding, I'm going to say 16 pixels, and then we'll say 8 pixels for our button. And then color, I'm going to give this kind of that same little color there. And then our border be 1 pixel solid, and then kind of a light gray border. All right, and that is it for our list item there. Now, I'm also going to have like a list item hover class. Okay, so I'm just going to remove that, and we'll say li hover, just like that, and you'll see why I named it this way. Background color, and we'll say D8. There we go, and we'll have a color of white. Cool, and we're also going to have a li selected class. We'll say color FFF, and then background color of 00925. Okay, and then just three or four more here. I'm going to have a container class, and I'm just going to say a max width of 740 pixels, and we'll have a width of 100%. We'll say margin auto, and then a padding of 1 rem. There we go. And we'll say, let's sit there. Let's have a quiz container. Okay, so we'll shrink that down, and we'll have quiz container. There we go. Background color, we'll say FA, and we'll say padding 1 rem. And we'll say margin top, we want to have 2 rem. Border radius, we'll say we'll say 4 pixels. And last one here, we'll have a container on the P, we'll say padding 8 pixels, and then 0 on the left and right. So we can go ahead and save that, and that is all of our styling. So again, if you just copy that over, there'll be timestamps down here, so feel free to use those as well. So next, let's go over to, so this is our page. Let's try and follow along here. This is our page in our app level component, and then we also have a page here, which is in the quiz, on the quiz route. And that's where we are right now. We're on this quiz route right here. So what we want to add in here is we're going to be using state and a lot of other things as well. So let's go ahead and import the use state hook. Okay. Now we also, let's go ahead and, by the way, you'll see this error, and this is one of the cool things of new Next.js 13. So it has to do with server routing, and also from serving from the server and serving from the client. So what we can actually say in here to make this a client component, just put use client up here at the top, and now Next.js, or the browser, knows to serve this from the client rather than the server. So next, let's go ahead and import some of the data that we're going to be using. Again, feel free to just copy over what I have below, or in the description below. So I'm going to create a new file in this app level here. I'm going to say data.js, just like so. And all this is going to be is just the data that we're going to be using here. So I'll show you, kind of go over it real quick. It's just an object here that we're naming quiz. It's going to have the total questions, which is 5 total questions here. And then we have questions, which is an array of all the questions. Each question is going to have an ID, the question, which is actually the question being asked, the answers, which is just an array of strings here. And then we're going to have the correct answer. And the way we're going to do this, there's different ways you can do a quiz application. The way we're going to do this, we're going to match the correct answer to the answer that the user selects, and that's going to determine whether or not the question was answered correctly or not. So that's kind of an overview of how that's going to work. So let's go ahead and import this data. Okay, so we'll import quiz from, we'll say, data.js. Let's go ahead and save that. Cool. Now, if we go ahead and we can actually just kind of console.log this, and we'll see, we'll do that in a minute here. So let's go ahead and got rid of my brackets, or my parentheses. I don't like that. There we go. Okay, so inside here, let's go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to do is we're going to say h1, and this is going to be the quiz page. Okay, let's go ahead and save. And let's go ahead and give this a class name of container. I'll give us some little padding there with the styles that we typed in just a minute ago. Under this h1 here, let's create another div. We'll have an h2. And inside here, we're going to have the question. We'll say 1 out of 5. And then we'll here have a span. And actually, this is where the span, that's where the 1 out of 5 is going to be. So we're going to come back and make this a dynamic. But right now, it's just going to be hard-coded in. There it goes. Like I said, we're going to come back and make this dynamic here in just a moment. But I just want to kind of put that in there just to take up some space. Now, next, let's go ahead. And so the way this is going to work, we use a ternary operator for our state. And before we move on, let's go ahead and actually add in our state. So we're going to have about 5 or 6 different pieces of state that we're going to track. And what we're going to track is what question we're on. We're on the first question. We're on the last question. Is the answer checked or is it unchecked? Is our answer selected? Are we showing the result? Are we not showing the result? So let's go ahead and add this in. So I'm going to say const here, and I'm going to have our active question. And we'll say set active question, just like so, equal to use state. And by default, we'll always have to give some default values, be set to 0, which is the first object in the array. So we'll say const. Next one's going to be selected answer. And set selected answer, just like so, equal to use. And by default, this is going to be an empty string. Next, we'll have checked and set checked like so, equal to use state. By default, we'll say false. Then we're going to have the selected answer index and set selected answer index, just like that, equal to use state. By default, this one is going to be set to null. So set selected answer index, set selected answer index, perfect. And then next we want to show result. So we'll say const, are we showing the result or are we not showing the result? Set show result, just like so, okay. Equal to use state, and we'll say false by default. And then next we're going to have our result, okay. And our result is going to be result and set result. And this is actually going to be an object, okay. And inside of our object, we're going to keep track of 3 different things. Our total score, which we're going to set to 0 by default, the correct answer, which by default we'll set to 0, and the wrong answers, which by default, again, we'll set to 0. So that is all of our state that we're going to be using right there, that we're going to be managing. And again, we see this is actually hard-coded in there. So let's go ahead and do some destructuring, and then we'll get on to some coding. So instead of going through and kind of like, if we're linking to questions.quiz.questions.question, that could be a little confusing. So we're just going to kind of destructure a little bit. So we'll say questions, just like that, is equal to quiz. And this is just to keep it tidy. You don't have to do this. I prefer to. So, and then we'll take out question, answers, and correct answer equal to questions. And we'll set this to the active question, okay? So let's go ahead and save that. Perfect. And now, instead of having this hard-coded, what we can do, let's go ahead and for the question that we're on, which by default, again, our state of the active question here, by default, we're setting it to 0. And right now it's hard-coded, so let's go ahead and change that. So instead of this 1, let's just delete the 1, and we'll add in our brackets here, right? So we want our active question, and if we just leave that like that, you'll see it says 0 because the 0 is the first item in our array. So we actually just want to say 0 or active question plus 1, which is going to be question number 1. And then out of 5 questions, that works if we're always going to have 5 questions. However, that's probably not the case. So what we're going to do is make that dynamic as well. So what we'll say is just questions.length, and that'll grab however many items are in the array, which in this case is 5. Okay, so cool. So that's pretty cool right there. So now if you can see, once we increment to the next question, which is going to be question 2, you'll see that updates as well, and so on and so forth. So that's how that's going to work. We'll leave this to 0 for now. So let's come down here and finish writing some more JSX. So we're going to have our H2 here, have this div here, and then next, we're going to have we're going to create another div here. And inside here, what we're going to do, so we either want to render this out, again, many different ways to build a quiz application. The way we're going to do it in this video is we're going to use a ternary operator. So we're either going to show our result or we're going to show the question that we're currently on. So what we're going to say here, let's open up our curly brackets, and we're going to say, if this is not true, okay, and we're specifically looking for show result. So if show result is not true, which is our state we just defined earlier, then we're going to render out some code. Else, we're going to render out some different code. So for the first code here, what we're going to be rendering is a div. And this is going to have a class name of, we'll say, quiz container. Just like that. And this is going to be the same. So we'll say div here, just like so, and a class name of quiz dash container. So let's go ahead and save that. So now you can see if show result is not true, then we're going to render out this div class quiz container, else we're going to render out this div with the quiz container. So right now they're both the same. So whether we change our state back to true or false, it's just going to look the same. So what we want to render out first is our actual question. Okay, so let's start out rendering out the question and then map through all of our answer choices. So inside here, what we're going to say, we'll have a h3, okay, and inside here we're going to have our question. So what we're going to say is questions, and we could just say 0.question, and this is going to give us the first item in the array. Okay, so what is the capital of France? If we go to the second question, which is what's the largest planet in our solar system, you can see it there. But we don't actually want that hard-coded. We actually want to set it to the active question that we're going to be able to increment through. So let's go ahead and change this to active question, which should be right now we're on 1. And again, if we change this, we're now going to see question number 2. Okay. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. Smash the like button if you feel like you're getting value out of it. I'd appreciate that. Kind of encourages me to continue making these videos. So after this H3, we actually want to render out, kind of map through all of our answer choices. So we're going to open up some curly brackets. And what we're going to say is answers.map. And again, we can do this because everything is destructured. And let's go ahead and say answer. And then we're also going to say IDX so we can ultimately create a key. And then we want to map through and create a list item. And in here, we're just going to have let's create a span, and we'll have the answer. So let's go ahead and save that. And then you can see we have kind of mapping through all of our answer choices. We're getting errors. Cool. It's probably because we don't have a key. React likes to have keys. So each child in a list must have a unique key. So we do have the ID, okay? Or what you can do, we could either say, where's our key equals in here in our list item, we can say key equals, answer.id, or since we added this IDX, it's just kind of naming convention, could say ID, IDX, same thing. That kind of does the same thing. So you can now see that our error disappeared. So let's give this a class name as well. And the class name we're going to be using, it isn't actually a static class name. We actually want to add in some dynamic capabilities here based whether or not the answer is correct or not. So what we're going to say is selected answer index equal to IDX. If that is true, I want to show that li selected. Else, we just want to say li hover. So let's go ahead and save that. And not getting any hover effect yet. That's okay. What we need to add here. So if selected answer index is equal to the IDX, we're going to have li selected, else li hover. We're getting an error here. Unexpected error. Let's go ahead and save. I'm going to reload. Okay, there we go. Not sure what's going on there. Okay. So now we have that. Cool. Perfect. So I'm trying to click, but we're not getting the selected. And that's because we actually need to add a function, an onClick function. So let's go ahead and add that in here. We'll say onClick. And onClick, what we want to do is actually run this function. So we'll add this function in here. And I'm going to call it onAnswer selected, just like so. And then we're going to pass through an answer and also IDX. So the kind of the ID of which one we clicked. So let's actually go up and create this function. So let's go ahead and scroll up here and let's put it right here underneath our destructuring. So what we'll say is this is going to select and check answer. Okay. So const, and then what we just typed out the function on answer selected. And our function is going to take in a couple parameters, the answer and the IDX, right? So we can get the ID of which one we're selecting. So in here, first thing we want to do is set checked state to true. Then we want to set our selected answer index. So set selected answer index to the ID of that specific list item. Okay, make sure those errors go away there. And now you can see we can actually select an item. Pretty cool, right? Awesome. So next, we actually want to compare, is this answer the correct answer? Okay. So we have our correct answer destructured, so for the active question, and then our selected answer here. So let's go ahead and we'll say if answer equal to correct answer, okay, then we'll say set selected answer to true, and we can go ahead and console.log, we'll console.log a string of true. Else we'll say set selected answer to false, and let's console.log a string false. Okay, cool. So let's see how that works here. So Paris, that is true, perfect. Now if you were to say Madrid, all of a sudden we're getting an error. Let's see what our error says. Set select answer. Oh, looks like I misspelled something there. You guys probably caught that already. Selected. Go ahead and refresh. So Rome, okay, false, 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 true. Hey, there we go. Perfect. So that's it right there, you guys. Now, one thing I'm noticing, we actually don't have a way to increment to the next question. A bit of a problem. So we have our answer selected, but how do we actually go to the next problem? So let's go ahead and add that in here right down. So I'm just going to scroll down some, and we'll put it just below here. Okay. And I actually only want to show, I want to have this button. It's only going to be, so you notice if we refresh here and nothing, we can't actually increment and go to the next question because nothing is selected. Now, once we select it, we can actually go to the next question. So how do we do that? So what we're going to add in here, so open up our curly brackets, and what we're going to say, if checked, which is our state, is true, then we're going to render out a button here. I'll tell you what, let's do this. Button, okay, and else we're going to render out another button. Okay, so inside this button, okay, I'm going to give this button here a class name of BTN. So if this one is selected, we're going to get this class in here. We still have some errors. We haven't filled anything out in here, and nothing's inside this button. We'll say next here. Okay. So get a little refresh there. So you can see, there you go. And so what we're going to say, we give this class name of BTN. Else if checked is not true here, then we'll say, let's give this a class name of BTN disabled. So it's going to be a slightly different color. And we can actually go ahead and say here, we'll say disabled. So let's go ahead and save that. So right now, checked is not true. So you can't see anything in there. Then you can see something in there once we have an answer selected. But let's go ahead and add. So I always want that next to be populated in there. I don't want a button looking like that. That's kind of funky. And actually, if we're on question number 4, or on number 5 rather, or if we're on the last question of our quiz, of our test, I don't want it to say next. I want it to say finish. So let's go ahead and take care of this first one here. And what I'm going to say, let's open up our curly brackets here, and we'll say if active question is equal to question.length minus 1. If that is true, then we're going to say finish. There we go. Else, we're going to say next. Okay. So let's go ahead and I'm going to just select that right here. I'm going to select that and I'm going to paste it in there like so. Let's go ahead and save. Okay. So now, there we go. Have it. Perfect. Now we actually can't run anything because we actually need to create a function. So let's go ahead and create a function here. And let's go ahead and I'm going to type right here. I'm going to hold down that shift button so we can, or command button so I can type on multiple lines. And what we're going to say is on click, and we want to run a function. So I'm going to run this function called next question, which we actually haven't created it yet. So we're probably going to get some errors here. Next question is not defined. So what we're going to say here, let's go ahead and create this function up here. So what we're going to do here, We're going to put it up. We'll put it right here. And what we'll say is, we'll say this is going to calculate score and increment to next question. There we go. So let's go ahead and our function here, const, it's going to be next question. Not going to be taking in any parameters. So, well, flashing like that. Right off the bat, next question is not defined. That's fine. So next question, there we go. What we want to say is, right off the bat, let's set our selected answer index to null, okay? So selected answer index, we're going to set that to null, especially important whenever we increment to the next question. And then we want to set our result. So we're going to keep track of our score, our correct answers, and our wrong answers. We're going to hang on to this in our state every time we increment to the next question. And if you want to expand upon this project and maybe push to a database, that'd be super cool. Something like Firebase, I'd love to see that. Maybe I'll make an extension of this video. So for right now, result, set result, and what we'll say previous. And what we're going to say here, there we go. We're going to say set selected answer, okay, true, then let's say else false, and if true, let's go ahead and type in this one here. What we're going to say is spread operator, we'll say previous, and then we'll have our score equal to previous.score plus 5, and I'm just kind of I'm giving each question a maximum points of 5. So correct answers equal prev.correct answers. We'll say plus 1. And this is just how many, this isn't the score, this is just how many questions we got right, okay? And so we'll do basically the same thing for the wrong answers. So we'll say previous. And then our, we're not going to increment our score if we get anything wrong, but we are going to increment kind of the wrong answers. So we'll say wrong answers, prev.wrong answers plus 1. Let's go ahead and save that. Now, we actually need to increment to the next question because right now we're just updating our result, okay? So underneath here, we'll say if active question is not equal to questions.length minus 1. So basically, if we're not on the very last question here, we want to increment to the next question. So we'll set the active question. This is our state that we're toggling here to previous prev plus 1. Else if we're starting over here, we'll just say set the active question. We want to set it back to 0. So if we're not on the last question here, we want to increment to the next question. If we are the last question, then we're just going to set back to 0. And we'll set our show result to true, so we can actually see our result. Because remember, we're toggling our result. Right now it's false. If we toggle to true, we'll be able to see our results. And then we want to set our checked to false. So let's go ahead and save that here. So Paris, we can see, and there we go. We can actually increment to the next question. And I don't think we're not actually rendering anything out here for our show result. So we're not going to see anything. It's just going to be a blank screen. There's our blank screen. So let's go ahead and work on the actual results that we're going to be showing out on the screen. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh that. So inside of our quiz container here, I'm going to create an H3 with results. And then let's have an overall here. So I'm going to create another H3 and we'll say overall, and we'll see. Let's add this in here. We'll say result.score divided by 25 times it by 100. So we actually get a percentage. And let's see. I'm going to get every single one of these wrong here. And see, we should have, I'll get one right. So I got a 20%. I got 1 out of 5, 20%. Pretty easy math there. So let's go ahead and kind of add in some extra functions here, extra functionality. So we'll have a total questions. capitalize that. We'll say total questions, and let's give this a span. We'll say questions.length. Okay, get rid of that there. Questions.length. Okay, we'll save that. And I'm going to copy this down a few times, just going to save a little bit of time. So our total questions, we also want our total score. And for our total score, it's going to be results dot score. And again, if we scroll up, we can see we're keeping track of this in our state, in our result state. So after this, after the score, let's find our correct answers. Okay, we'll get rid of that. And in here we'll have result. Again, this actually needs to be result. Sorry. Result dart correct answers. And once more we'll copy this down and we keep track of our wrong answers. And this will be wrong answers. So let's go ahead and save that. And let's see, capital of Paris or France, that's Paris. There we go. Largest system, it's going to be Jupiter. This is actually Vatican City. I did not know that. I knew all the other ones. I didn't know what the smallest country in the world was. By the way, I used ChatGPT, you guys, to come up. I was just, hey, I'm building a quiz application. Can you please generate me a JSON file using 5 questions? So kind of cool there. So Mandarin, I actually did know that one. And then hopefully you know that one too if you're in tech here. So let's go ahead and refresh. I'm going to get a couple of these wrong. Make sure it's calculating everything correctly. So there you go. 1 answer correct, 4 answers wrong. So not a very good user experience to hit the refresh button. So let's go ahead and add a button here to restart. So let's add a button here and we'll say restart. There we go. And we'll have an on click here. So we'll say on click, and on click here, what we want to do, we'll just say run this function of window.location.reload, just like that. Cool. So let's give it a shot again. We'll say Paris, we'll say Jupiter, and Vatican City if we want to get 100, Mandarin, Bill Gates, and boom, results overall 100%, total number of questions 5, total score 25, correct answers 5, wrong answers 0, and now we can restart our quiz. So pretty cool. And again, we're on the quiz route here. So went over a kind of high level overview of routes with Next.js 13 to start our quiz. That concludes our video, you guys. I hope you liked it. Smash the like button if you did. Follow me on the channel here. If you want to expand upon this would be a great project. If you want to use like a Firebase backend, if you're learning some backend serverless databases, that would be a lot of fun. And perhaps I'll do that in the next video. So thanks for watching, you guys. Smash the like button. I will see you on the next one.